Hello everybody and welcome to today's session. My name's Sharon Smith and I am the Member Support Officer here at Community Woodlands Association. I'm delighted to have you join us today for the session on getting heard and communicating with your wider audience and communities. We're joined by two presenters today who are very well-informed communication practitioners who I'm going to learn a lot from myself today, and I hope that your experience is the same. Firstly, we have Jenny Tweedy from RSPB Scotland. Lovely to have you here, Jenny. She's been working in journalism and communications for 25 years now, and she started out with the Herald, a newspaper in Glasgow, before moving into the world of conservation, with a position as the Press and Comms Officer for RSPB Scotland, handling all aspects of media work, interpretation, social media, campaigns and the rest. And following a four-year stint as a copywriter for RSPB, she's now back working for RSPB Scotland as the communications manager for the Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest. We're also joined by our Community Woodlands Association staff team member, Jenny Pittendray. Jen's experience in communications is as a result of her work with NHS, with Aberdeen University and the voluntary sector, and now with Community Woodlands Association. She loves her work and aims to make CWA communications clear, concise and appealing. And can I just say that her time here at CWA, she has done a stellar job at transforming our outward comms and our website. So thank you, Jen, for all that you do. And in this session, Jen will chat about her approach to CWA communications, with a focus on the use of Canva to help produce visually appealing communications. So, before we go any further, just a quick outline of the session. I'm going to speak with you for another 5 minutes, and then we'll head into first session from Jenny. We'll have a 5-minute screen break if time allows, and then we'll finish up with Jen. We spoke earlier on to discuss about question formats, and each of the presenters will tell you how they would prefer the questions to come, but hopefully we'll have time at the end as well if you've got any questions that have arisen as you've watched throughout the presentation. Before we begin though, I would ask that you indulge me for a little bit. We have people in the audience today who are not members of Community Woodlands Association, and I'd just like to share with you some of the work that we do. We have over 200 members, most of whom are community groups owning or managing woodlands in Scotland. One of the benefits of being a member of Community Woodlands Association is that we advocate in the political arena on behalf of our members. So, for example, we recently responded to the Deer Control consultation on behalf of our members. We provide support and advice to communities who are looking to start up a community woodland group, or who have already started a community woodland group and are looking for ongoing support. We listen to our members' needs and then support with training sessions, such as this, exchange visits, mentoring programmes, and we've just recently actually had our annual conference in AGM. One of our team members, Piers Boise, is a professional forester, and he is able to provide paid advice and consultancy to any groups that are so looking for that support. And we work in partnership with strategic partners across Scotland to make it easier for our communities to be actively involved in woodland management. So if you're not a member of Community Woodlands Association and you'd be interested in finding out a little bit more, I will share with you the link in the chat later on if you can have a look at, or you might wish to scan the QR code just now. I'll put it also up on the screen if we get a screen break later, and that'll take you to the page on our website where you can either join as an organisation or join as an individual member. So without any further delay, I'm going to pass you on to Jenny Tweedy. Jenny, would you like to take control of the slides and I'll be able to begin?
It's all very exciting, taking control. Right.
There you go, that's you. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Me up now. Well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for coming along today. I wanted to start by telling you just a little bit about what it is that I do for the Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest. So I'm what's called the communications manager, and it's a very broad role which involves running their website. I do their social media channels, and I also help out with booklets that are being produced or leaflets, anything along those lines, or any displays if we're going to an event. And I also help out with press work. There's 24 different members of the Alliance, all sorts of different organizations. Some of them are huge and they have their own press teams. And some of them are very small and appreciate a little bit of press support. So there's a range of different things that I do for them. I actually didn't put up the link for the Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest website here, but I'll share that in the chat afterwards. And it's a really good place to come and have a look around and see what we do and see some examples of the communications that we put together as well. So, but here's a little bit about what I'm hoping to cover today. I've been doing this for a long time, and the world of communications is always changing. It's always altering in ways that you don't expect. So these are just some of the basics and tips and pointers that I've picked up through the years. When it comes to questions, I would just say there are no stupid questions. You know, some people get a bit embarrassed about asking a question, so you know, put it in the chat, raise your hand, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. Sometimes, you know, you might want to, we'll store them up and have them for the end of the session. But if you feel that there's something burning that you want to say while we're going along, please do put that in. However, if you want to get in touch with me separately at the end, if you're a little bit shy about getting involved today, please do that as well. You should get my details at the end and you can just drop me an email. So I wanted to start today by taking you back to basics. So writing is hard. The basics of all communication is writing, whether you're talking or whether you have something that's going up on a screen, or even if you're putting together a display with some photographs on it, most of the time you're making some sort of a written plan. We learn English at school. We pretty much all learn English at school, and that was, for a lot of us, the last time that you learned any English at all. So it's hardly surprising that we forget the things that we're taught. And also a lot of the things that you were taught at school are not true. And they've also changed through the years. And you're not taught things like how to write a press release at school. That's quite a specialist thing. Good English is really important. It is hard, but it is really important because it helps you to get across your message. It helps people to understand what you're trying to say. If you've got a sentence that's completely confusing and people don't engage with it, they're just going to switch off and move on to something else. However, you don't need to be Shakespeare. It doesn't need to be like a level of language that you think is unattainable. A lot of it's just very basic things. And I should say that, you know, most people in the UK and in Scotland are writing and speaking in English, but you may find that it's more appropriate for your particular audience to be using Scots or Gaelic as well. However, I can only help you with the English part, so that's what I'm going to be covering today. So English is, as I said, it's changing all the time. There are certain rules like I before E, except after C, that we learned, which turn out to be not true as you get older. So it's important not to cling to things that you may have learned a long time ago. And if somebody says, well, actually, things have changed and moved on a bit, then to try and move with the times. I don't want to go through all of the what are called parts of speech, which are all the things like verbs and nouns and adjectives, etc. But there's some few basic things that I've put on the screen there. You know, nouns are things, verbs are doing words, etc. There's a few rules that can help, you know, with understanding. So things like adjectives describing nouns. So when, you know, something is a pretty bird or a pretty lichen, that's an adjective. And you know, when you've got compound adjectives, putting in a little dash and a little hyphen in the middle can help you with understanding. So it's not a herring merchant that's pickled, it's a pickled herring merchant. And that's what the little hyphen is there for. As I said, there's lots and lots of different rules and things. And the best way, this is what I was looking for actually, because my favorite book has departed. It's on my desk somewhere and I'm not quite sure where it is. Get yourself a nice book. So I've got a few books. There's one called Dreyer's English. I'll put a link for these afterwards. You can also, fantastic book on punctuation if you're interested in the subject. So Eat, Shoots and Leaves. If anyone's not read that, get that book. I might be a bit sad and find these things quite exciting, but you can also get style guides for newspapers, which are really useful. So I've got a couple here, or just look on the BBC website, because they've generally got a really high standard. So if you're, wondering, oh, does this need a capital letter, or how do I punctuate this? See if there's an example on the BBC website, and that's a very, very good way to go about things. Okay, right, here are some sort of broader tips. Now we move on from the scary parts of English. So short sentences. It's really, really useful when you're writing to try and keep your sentences as short as possible. So there's been some studies done into this, and they basically say that if you keep it under 25 words, then more than 50% of people are going to be able to understand what you're saying. It's very tempting to just have a sentence that runs on and on and on and on, and you never quite get to the end of it, but do try and keep it short if you can. But don't make them all exactly the same length, because that's really boring. So you want to maybe have one or two that are really short. You could have one or two that are a bit longer if you've got a bit more that you want to say, but try and aim for more than 25 words, or people just lose the will halfway through and they forget what you're trying to say. And there's some good tips there, just try reading a sentence out loud, and if you have to take a breath midway through, then it's definitely too long. So there's something called the active and the passive voice, which you may have heard about previously. So an active sentence is where the subject of the sentence, so that's the thing the sentence is about, is the thing doing the verb, and the object is the thing having the thing done to it. So the easiest way to describe this is to actually show you an example. So in this sentence, we've got the jackdaw. So the jackdaw is the subject of the sentence. So it's the thing doing the thing. And it knocked the bird feeder to the ground. So that's an active sentence. A passive sentence is where it's the other way around. So the bird feeder was knocked to the ground by the jackdaw. I hope that makes sense. So jackdaw is the subject, and it's just where it is in the sentence as to whether it's active or whether it's passive. Try to use the active voice wherever you can, because it's just a better way to make the sentence sound more interesting, to engage people more. If it's passive, then it's kind of, the subject is at the end. So again, people have to wait a while to read through to find out what it's about. Sometimes you want to mix it up a little bit, but the active voice is always the best way to go if you can. A little bit about plain English. So in all my years in conservation, I hear the term sort of dumbing down a lot. Oh, we jumped two. Did I jump two? Let me go back one. There we go. I've heard the word dumbing down an awful lot when you say, I want to write this in simple terms. Writing things in simple terms and using plain English is not dumbing down, it's opening up. It's a very inclusive way of talking to people, and it helps people to understand what you're trying to say. All communication is about trying to help people understand what you're trying to say. So if you're using technical language, if you're using really big words that other people might struggle to understand, you're shutting people out of the conversation, which is the last thing that you want to do. So the more inclusive you can be with the language that you're using, the more people will care about what you're trying to tell them. And that means that they're more likely to take the action that you want them to take. So that might be joining in an event, or joining your organization, or taking some sort of action for nature or for the woodlands that you're working towards. So, it's just the reason why it's a good thing to do. The stuffier that your language, the more formal it is, it really creates a barrier between you and your audience. I often use the example of being at a dinner party. So if you were at a dinner party and you were talking to the person next to you about what you were doing, you wouldn't turn on the sort of the formal language. You would use very friendly, approachable terms. And I think that all language should really be written in that way. Unless you've got a very specific purpose. If you're writing a funding application, or if you're doing something that, has a scientific bent to it, or an academic paper, then that's fine. You can use the language that's most appropriate. But I think for almost everything you do, try to think that you're at a dinner party, you're turning to the person next to you, and you're explaining what it is that you're trying to do. So a few tips on how to do that. So you probably don't have to worry about using office jargon. It's not something you're going to be using. But I've been faced with some terrible office jargon through the years, and it really makes meetings just very, very boring. But also probably more appropriate to you is scientific jargon. So, I would try and avoid using scientific or specialist words if you possibly can. You get into the habit of doing it, and I do it myself because I've been doing this for such a long time. These words are just how everybody talks. But if you're talking to the outside world, you really need to try and avoid them, or at least explain them if you are going to use them. So some of the words I often, encourage people not to use. So optics, which is basically binoculars and telescopes, you will still see people saying, oh, we've got an optics demonstration. It just means binoculars and telescopes. So just say that. But also words like wildfowl and invertebrates and fauna and flora. These are quite scientific words that can really turn off an audience that doesn't come from a scientific background. However, it can be sometimes a bit difficult to find an alternative word. So the word invertebrate, for example, is kind of a coverall for lots of different beasts and things, lots of spiders and insects and slugs, etc. So, it's difficult to find a word that actually is comparable to the word invertebrate. But I was thinking about this the other day, and actually, I don't know if you know the organization Bug Life, who are a member of the Alliance. And can you imagine if they were called the Invertebrate Society? Just that would create such a barrier for people. But somebody at some point has come up with this amazing term, Bug Life, and you know exactly what it's about and what they're talking about and what they're trying to protect. So just, think around it and try and think if there's a different word that you might be able to use. I would avoid using Latin words or scientific words. They're not all Latin words, unless there's a very good reason to. So I have to talk about lichens and bryophytes. Bryophytes, there's another complicated term. So bryophytes are mosses and liverworts. So I try and avoid saying bryophytes, but I slip into it from time to time. So lichens often don't have an English name, or they don't have a common name beside them. So sometimes you have to use the scientific name. Or sometimes there isn't a common name that everybody recognizes. So in that case, it's useful to use a scientific term as well. But apart from that, unless there's a very good reason to do it, again, just don't use the scientific words because they don't mean anything to the general audience. And in fact, as a rule, Latin words, so you probably know our language has come from a whole load of different languages in the past coming together. So Germanic languages, which is, your sort of Scandinavian languages and German, and also French. And we've had a lot of Latin influence as well, the scientific terms. And you see the different words in modern English which have come from these roots. And often the better words to use when you're talking, the sort of plainer words, if you like, have come from a Germanic root. So that's all I'm meaning here when I'm talking about Latin words and Germanic words. So for example, the terms buy comes from a Germanic root, and purchase. So everybody knows what you mean when you say buy and purchase, but actually buy is a better word to use because it's shorter, it's to the point. And that's quite often the case when you're talking. You want to try and use simple words whenever possible. It's not dumbing down. I know you're going to say, oh, it's dumbing down and we're talking to children. It's simply a better way to reach people. So things like farming and agriculture, sometimes it might be appropriate to use the word agriculture, but a lot of the time you should be saying farming instead. And acronyms, I don't know about you, but my organization uses a lot of acronyms. And again, we just get used to saying it, and then somebody new starts and they've no idea what's going on when they go to a meeting. So always explain what an acronym is. Never assume that somebody knows what you're talking about when you're using an acronym. Oh gosh, I keep doing that. So try to make everything you write as short as possible. So don't write essays. People don't read anymore. They don't even read a blog, let alone a novel. I'm very impressed by anyone who's got time these days to sit down and read a novel. But the shorter you can make things, the more you're likely to reach people and get them to do what you want them to do. So people skim things, and even if they're actually reading a blog, they'll probably still skim it to a certain degree. And they've actually done experiments where they can track people's eye movements on things, so they know exactly where people go when they're reading. And the first sentence is always the most important. In a press release, for example, if I'm putting a press release out, everything that I want to say pretty much has to go into that first sentence, which sounds crazy. And it can take me ages to actually identify what I'm going to put in the first sentence. And then I'm thinking, gosh, I have to keep it fewer than 25 words, and I have to use the active voice and all these other things. So it can be quite a lengthy process writing things. So yeah, so don't hide your meaning. Don't be like, oh, it's autumn and the leaves are turning and it's beautiful and there's loads of birds coming in and it's great, and get to the woodlands, and oh, by the way, I've got an event happening next week. No, no, no. Your event is first, and then all the other beautiful reasons why people should come goes after that. Try to keep one thought per sentence if you can. So again, that short sentence. And around 3 sentences maximum per paragraph. Really, 1 or 2 is better, believe it or not. And if you look at the BBC website, again, often they use only 1 sentence per paragraph. You probably don't even realize that they're doing that, but that's how they write. So don't stick a big screed of text on the page because it's really off-putting to people. Try and keep your paragraph short as well. Bullet point lists, really, really good way to simplify information and help people identify it. Numbered lists, even better if you've got a blog. Top 5, whatever, people already thinking, oh, I've only got to read 5 things, so I'll come and read that blog. And then SEO. So there's an acronym for you. I don't know if you've heard of this before. So this is search engine optimization. And they're often looking for things like headlines and bits of text. So if you go into Google these days and you type something in, you'll probably get a bit of text that comes up on the screen with something highlighted in it. No, give it a go if you don't know what I'm talking about. If you imagine, so you're searching, tell me about lichens. I keep going back to lichens because it's a lot of what I write about these days. Tell me about lichens. You'll get a bit of text probably coming up from Plant Life or somebody that says, lichens are symbiotic creatures that are a fungus and an algae or something like that. You want to be that bit of text. You want Google to find your bit of text and match it perfectly to what people are looking for. So it's quite a good exercise to type some things in. If you're writing about something, type it into Google, tell me about, community woodlands, and see what it comes up. See whose text is beating yours in Google and try to match what they're saying. Okay, proofread. Proofread. A lot of what I do with my life, even though I'm not now a proofreader, is just reading things over and over and over again. You're doing it for sense, you're doing it to correct things because I make mistakes all the time. I actually have a mild dyslexia, which means that my spelling isn't very good. I shouldn't admit that because I've been working in this field for such a long time. And I have a journalism degree and it's, I still can't spell very well. Proofreading is the way to get around that. You just need to check what you're writing, that it makes sense. And if you want, and if you're able to get somebody else to check it as well, that's even better. We used to have a team of copywriters and we would always try and check each other's work if we possibly could. Okay, moving on to audience. So who is it that you're writing for? That's always one of the first things to think about. So you should have a defined audience, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes if you're just putting a press release out, it's just a nice story and it doesn't really matter who it goes to. But very often you're thinking, right, I want to target people who live near this site because they might come to an event, or I want to target politicians because I want them to be better for, protecting community woodlands. So imagine what their day is like and how they're going to come across your communication. And you can be very specific. You can think, gosh, they've gone to work on a bike and they get into the office and someone's going to put a bit of paper in front of them, which has got all the today's press stories on it. Or maybe, there's somebody who's gone to the local shop and they've bought a paper and they're taking it home and they're having it with their coffee. Try and think about that person's journey in your head. Always try and write for your audience and not for yourself. It's very easy to assume that everybody else has got the same knowledge as you. But I'm always shocked, I've worked RSPB a long time and I've talked to a lot of members of the public. And just sort of the level of general knowledge that people have about birds specifically, but wildlife in general, is really not there. A lot of people just don't have the experiences that, people who work in conservation have. They're not getting outside, they're not getting that knowledge. So always try and think about those people when you're writing. You're not just putting it out for people who are in the know. You want to try and reach broadest audience as possible. Always try and think about what you have to offer. Why should anybody care about what it is that you're writing and what you're trying to communicate to people? Also try and be inclusive as you can. So I talked a little bit about plain simple language, but also try and think these days about neurodiversity. So things like dyslexia. So quite often, if you have, again, big screeds of text, a lot of the stuff that I've already talked about can really help. So breaking things up into bullet points, making sure you don't have just too much text on the page. Careful of your capital letters, things like that. That can really break up the text as you're writing. You'll see on social media, you quite often get an option to use what's called alt text, which is the type of text that describes what the picture looks like. And it's a really good idea to be putting that in. You get it on websites as well. It's sort of in the back office and it says, describe the picture. And it's great to be doing that for people who have different ways of engaging with what you're doing. And if you are doing an event or anything like that, just make sure that you are telling people exactly what to expect. And I think I'm going to go on to talk about, event listing in a little bit, so I will come back to that in a little moment. I just want to very quickly cover some of the different communication channels that you might be using when you're talking to people, because they're all slightly different and there are so many different channels. So leaflets, so a lot of people do put together leaflets, all sorts of different styles of leaflets. You get guides which have, like a picture of the tree and then a description of what the tree is. You get leaflets that tell you about projects. You get, brochures, which might be covering a bit of a heavier subject. It's always best, as with everything, to keep them as short as possible. Don't try and cram everything in. Are people ever going to read it? Are they ever going to engage with it? And the more you put in, the more you've got to write, the more you've got to proof, and the more chance there is of mistakes creeping in. So this is a good excuse to just make it as short as possible. Again, a lot of the rules that I've already talked about, assume no knowledge. People don't know what you're talking about, so help them into the subject. Don't dump them into the middle of something. Take them in from the beginning. And part of that is making sure you have a really good introduction. Like, imagine you're handing this leaflet to somebody who has no idea. You can think somebody coming from Mars, if that helps you. This is going to somebody who's no idea what you're talking about. Make sure you explain it to them from the very beginning. Maps and pictures. If you've got an area that you're talking about, my knowledge of Scotland is pretty good, but a lot of the West Coast, which is where I'm doing a lot of my work, I don't necessarily know because I haven't been there myself. So having a map, it's the first thing I do is I go onto Google and I have a look at their maps. It's a really good way to get people to understand what you're talking about. And pictures, photos, really, really important. Make sure your contact details or any websites on the back, make sure that people can get in touch with you if you want them to, or they have somewhere else to go that they can get more information. People lose leaflets, or they just chuck them out. They don't even want to keep them. So if they've gone online on their phone, or they've taken it home, they've put it on their laptop or whatever, they've got some sort of a record of you and what you were trying to tell them, and hopefully they can come back to that at another time. So QR codes are really useful as well. And then just use all the guidance that I've just given you about writing, short sentences, don't use technical terms, etc., and proofread. If something is going into print, if a leaflet is going into print, it is there for all times. If something's going onto a website, you can go on and change it if it's got a mistake in it. If you accidentally print somebody's personal phone number into a leaflet, you're in big trouble. And you might have 10,000 of them and you don't really want to be mulching them and trying again. Okay, a little bit about social media. There's a very broad area, so these are just a few tips. So first of all, it is a brilliant communication tool. When I started doing my first role as a comms person, it was about 2007, there wasn't really any social media. This was something that developed and came into being as I was in the role. We were just using press releases and posters and those kind of communications when I started off. This has transformed the way that we talk to people, because you can have conversations with with people. It's not just a poster and then you don't know who's engaging with it. Suddenly you're putting something up, you know that 1,000 people have seen it, you know that, 20 people have reposted it to other people, and somebody's got a question and they can ask it. And it's just a very easy way for people now to find out information about stuff. And I think as things like, Wi-Fi and phone communications have gotten better, and well, almost everybody, I have to say, I only got my first smartphone last year. Actually, it might even have been this year. It wasn't that long ago that I got my first smartphone, which might seem amazing, but I would say the majority of people have now got a smartphone of some description, and it means that they can go out into the wilds. They can go, wow, I like, tell me more about this site, and they can go on to, a website somewhere and they can find out all about it. They're not looking for leaflets. They're not trying to get a damp, soggy leaflet out of a leaflet holder in a wood somewhere. It's just changed the way that people are finding their information. It also means that you can really target your audience. You can find out which social media channel you think your audience is on, and you can go there and you can talk to them. And also you can attract people, very, very specific people into the world that you're wanting to talk to. But you have to know the platform. There's so many different platforms. You've got, well, Twitter, which is now X, you've got LinkedIn, you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got Facebook, you've got YouTube. So many different channels, hundreds out there really when you start looking into it. It's best to try and copy what other people do. Look at other organizations like yours, see where they are, see if it's working for them, look at their engagement and how many followers they are, etc. And if that looks good and you want to have a social media channel, then go there and try it. And you've got to keep an eye on it. You can't just it's not like a leaflet where you can stick it in a holder and then walk away from it. You have to keep engaging with it. However, there are some issues with social media, which you also discover fairly quickly when you do it. So as I said, look before you leap. So if something really isn't working for different organizations, or there's been a lot of issues, for example, with X recently, and there's been a lot of people pulling out of it. So that's maybe not something that you want to get into. So maybe you want to look at one of the other channels that's coming up. It's always good to do a little bit of research. Doesn't need to be like some full-on analysis, but just, have a bit of an awareness of what's happening out there. Always protect yourself. Protect yourself online. Don't share personal information. Don't put your phone number up. I avoid even having my photo up on things if I possibly can, and keep your personal accounts personal. So quite often for things like Facebook in particular, you're linking your personal account to maybe a group or a page that you're running. Always make sure that there's a barrier there, that there's a wall that people can't reach you through and can't get in and sort of see your personal information. So don't feed the trolls. I presume people know what a troll is, but for those who don't know, a troll is somebody who is basically there just to cause trouble. So people may have a beef with your organization or with something that you're doing. It could be somebody local who's just doesn't like, oh, you're building a path. Well, I don't want that path to go there because then people are going to be walking here or whatever. But sometimes it's just random people who come on and they just like winding you up. So try not to engage with them as much as possible. If you've got somebody who's causing you big problems, you can block them. But a lot of the time, if you just don't engage with them, they won't keep coming at you. Things can go online, can go bad online very fast. But I have to say, I've probably had maybe 3 instances in 20 years of things going really bad. So it's not usual. It often happens overnight as well. So you get to sort of, 5 o'clock, you're thinking, gosh, everything looks fine. And then you go home the next morning, it's like, wow, what happened? So just be aware of that. Just have that in your head that, oh, it's lovely and sunshines while things going well, but things can go wrong. And don't be stressed about it. It happens to the rest of us. And anything that does happen where something blows up, it will blow over eventually. You will get through it. Somebody said to me once, it's tomorrow's chip wrapper. Anything that's in the newspaper is going to get thrown out within a few days, and then everybody will forget. So people will move on. as I said, I was going to come back to event listings. So this is something, it's not exactly social media, but it's something that you're probably going to have online. You maybe have it as a leaflet as well. Always think for your event, what's called the USP. That's the exciting office jargon, which I said not to use, which is your unique selling point. So what is it you are offering people that is going to make them come to your event? Just don't just assume that your event's exciting. Think about what it really is that makes it really, really special. What are people going to learn when they come? Are they going to learn about the different types of tree bark that you might be able to use to identify trees in winter? Or are they going to learn how to put up a fence or get rid of invasive non-native species? What is it? What is the thing that they're going to learn when they come along? Or if they're not going to learn something, what are they going to feel? Are they going to go, wow, this is beautiful. I'm hearing bird song. I'm seeing this amazing view. I've never experienced this bit of woodland like this, or this bit of land like this. Manage expectations, however. So, quite often, if you're running a wildlife event, for example, the wildlife might not show up because it has a habit of doing that. So don't say, we guarantee you're going to see beavers or anything like that. It's like, we hope you might be able to see beavers. If you're lucky, you might be able to see beavers. But, sell it to them, but don't overreach. Tailor the timings to your audience. So some people, again, they're just like, oh, when is the best time for me to have this an event? But always think, well, the audience that I'm inviting, when is good for them? These working people, so they can't come during the day. Should we have it at weekend, which is best for families? Include all the information, everything. It's very, very easy to forget, like a simple thing like how long the event is or where it's going to start, or, if people need to bring coffee or anything like that. Let people know what to expect rather than excluding people. So sometimes I have seen through the years people putting up events like, this event isn't suitable for wheelchair users. Well, how do you know? Because you've no idea why somebody has a wheelchair user. So instead of saying that, say what the event is. So say things like, this event involves a long walk on a rough path and includes multiple steps. And then please contact us in advance if you have any questions about accessibility. So that's a much better way of trying to include people in your event rather than just saying, no, you can't come, you're not the right person for this event. And if it's outdoors, as most of our events are, remind people that we have weather. So, it's in November or whenever, and it's going to be cold. So, wrap up well. So a little word about newspapers. So there is still a local press out there. I'm amazed that local papers managed to survive. Their circulations have nosedived really in the last 25 years since I started in journalism. Journalism has been kind of collapsing around me, which has been interesting. But local papers are still really, really important to local communities. You'll probably find that you'll be able to find a named journalist at your local paper who's got an interest in wildlife and wild places and landscapes. They might write a column. They might do lots of other stories. They might come under like environment correspondent, things like that. See if you can make contact with that person. Have a chat to them, introduce yourself, say, hi, this is me, this is what I do. Invite them out to see your project, invite them out to an event. They might not come, but they might, think, hey, that's a great idea. So try and have that personal contact. If it might be, I should say I've said newspapers, but it might be a local radio station. Fantastic, phone them up, say, can I come on and talk to your listeners about what it is that I do? And they'd probably be very, very enthusiastic about that. If you're writing a press release, they are extremely formulaic. Go online, look at some examples. You will find examples out there and just follow the formula. Don't try and do anything clever. Just go with it. They're very boring looking, but they're like that for a reason. National press. Now, don't be afraid if you've got a big story, or if you've got a story that you think is a little bit special. You've got a volunteer who's done something incredible. Maybe they've raised huge amounts of money. Maybe they've climbed Mount Everest or something. They've done something that's quite extraordinary. Don't be afraid, as long as they're okay with it. Don't do it without asking them, but don't be afraid to write a press release and get it out a bit wider than just your local papers. Or it might be a species. You might have found a species in your woodland that hasn't been seen for 100 years in Scotland, something along those lines. national papers can be really quite interested in those stories. And you might even get a bit of sort of broader BBC interest, or somebody else who wants to come and do an interview. And there's lots of tips and things on places like YouTube for doing sort of big media interviews. So don't be scared about it if that happens, and be aware that it can happen, because things can blow up. If it's a good story, the media can really latch on to it. So this picture, for example, I don't know if you've seen this picture in the press recently, but this is our zombie spider fungus that was found at one of the rainforest projects by a volunteer. They've got an amazing project there where they've got volunteers going out into the rainforest to find species and catalogue what's there, because no one's done this since the 1980s. And they've been coming up with this most incredible stuff. And they've got a volunteer called Ben who's just taken some fantastic pictures. And there is actually a spider underneath that fungus. This is called a gibellula, I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's basically, it makes the spider do things before it kills it. So the spider is compelled to crawl underneath a leaf. So this is actually, he's taken the leaf and he's turned it the wrong way up. So it would have been the other way up. So it compels it to crawl underneath a leaf, and then it gets stuck there, and the zombie fungus sprouts out, and that's what the fungus looks like. And then the leaf, we think, Ben has this theory about it, that it protects the fungus, so that the spores can then drop down and not get covered in rain, and then they can find more spiders to infect and turn into zombies as well. So it's really a horrible story, but this sort of captured the imagination of the press, and this went huge, and it went around the world. So yeah, you never know when a story is going to do that. So quick thing about photos and videos. So this is actually the ASR steering group, or as it was last year. So it just sort of shows almost anything can be a photo that you can use. So this is actually on our website. So it's quite a sort of just an office picture. But if you're out and about and you're doing community projects, you will have opportunities to take amazing photos. And they're very, very important for things like local papers. So people always buy newspapers if there's a photo of themselves in it or their family in it. It's why they still do those pictures, the school pictures. Like they'll have, pages and pages of pictures of children. It's because parents and grandparents and, friends and family are going to rush out and buy that paper. So it's a very, very useful tool. But it also helps to illustrate stories and make things look a bit more exciting than just having boring words. So always take photos if you can, and have a stash of photos that you can use for, event publicity and all that sort of stuff. However, it's never simple, because you should these days be using permission forms for any pictures of people. So if you've got species or anything like that, you don't need to worry. Obviously, you can't ask a fungus if it's all right if you use its picture in the paper. But for any people, you should be getting permission forms signed. You've got to then store the picture and the form in a GDPR compliant way. So you've got to make sure that you're not, accidentally sending that information out to the world. It's particularly important with children, but really anybody who's identifiable in a picture. And the way I always think about it again is, okay, what if somebody who came to the event, for example, is somebody who's escaped, a domestic abuse situation or something like that, and they've started a new life somewhere, and the person they're escaping from doesn't know where they are, and then their picture appears in the paper, and suddenly it's online, and then people can find them. So that's quite an extreme example, but that's always what I've got in my head, is like, I need to protect people that are in these photos. So how can I do that? I should say that also goes for things like car registration numbers, anything that's identifiable, even dogs, like people's dogs, they can be identified through their dogs. So just be cautious about using photos. So if obviously photos really useful again for social media, and I would say almost all social media posts now have an image or a video with them. Some of them have gone a bit more onto the video kind of way. So things like oh, I am actually going to come back to talk about video, so I won't do that now. Blogs, recruiting a volunteer to come and take photos. That's quite a good way to do it. Make sure they've got all the forms signed, etc. You will find also you've got local volunteers who may have photos on file already. And they can, they can send you some photos which you might be able to use. Always credit your photos, always make sure you've got permission. If anyone's sending you photos, make sure they've given you some written permission so that you know you've got permission. And then videos, yes. So things like Instagram, for example, have moved a bit more onto video content. Doesn't need to be professional. You can just shoot it on your phone. Sound can be a challenge. You can get yourself a little microphone if that's useful. Same issue with identifying people and making sure you've got permission. Very quickly, logos, make sure you use the right logos. If you've got any funders, etc., make sure you know what they are, what size they should be, how they should appear on something, and always use them. Okay, very quickly, on to the future. Dun, dun, dun. I feel like I should do some special effect or something. So communications, as I said at the start, it's changing all the time. So here's quite a good example that you can use to show how it's changing. So this is about how people hear the news, so hear or read it. In the 1950s, it was pretty much exclusively radio and newspapers. That's how people were hearing the news. As soon as TV came in the 1960s, it very quickly replaced things. So people were hearing their news from the television because they were watching it anyway. So, you know, the telly just stayed on, the 10 o'clock news came on, and that's how they engaged with it. And actually, TV has remained the dominant way that people have heard news all the way up to last year. Last year was the first year that online overtook TV as the way that most people found out their news. I'm actually surprised it took that long, but last year it finally did overtake it. So what does this mean? Well, it means it's more of a challenge to reach people because there's so many different channels now, it's hard to know which ones to use, you know. And if you are trying to communicate with people, you're not just necessarily putting out press release, now you're putting out a press release and a tweet post or X post, something on Instagram, something on Facebook. Oh, you've got to think, well, how am I going to reach the local radio channel? Do I still need to put up a poster, etc.? You've got so many different options. Sometimes it's best to keep it simple. You know, again, if you can identify your audience and you know where they are, then you know how to reach them for whatever it is you're trying to do. You don't have as much control over things. I mean, to be honest, we never had control when we were putting out a press release as to who was going to print it, how big it was going to be. Quite often you would send out a press release and it would end up as this little tiny 2-line thing in the paper, you know, but it's the same situation with a lot of social media channels. And you can't control what's happening with, you know, broader things like X changing. You don't have any control over that. You just have to kind of go with it and adapt and change and find out where the best things are to do things. Old-fashioned methods can still be very successful, particularly in the local setting. And it's important to say that everybody wants to rush and do new technology, but my goodness, you can't beat a good poster. I don't know if the co-op still does this, but they used to have like a notice board where you could put posters. Fantastic way to reach people. Don't knock it. You know, that's a really good way to tell people what's going on. AI. I love this photo because we are now getting to the point where AI learns from looking at things on the internet, and now things on the internet are being written by AI. So essentially AI is talking to itself and learning, and it's kind of a weird situation that we're getting into. And also we've got scammers that are using AI, and then AI that's being used to notice the scammers. So we've got a bit of a strange world going on at the moment, but it's already in wide use. And I think a lot of people are not necessarily aware. I think certainly the slightly older generation, into which I put myself, maybe don't realize how much young people are using it for like job applications, for, you know, letters, everything. They're thinking, well, how can I use AI for this? Why should I learn how to write a letter myself when AI can do it for me? So I came up with some stats. I did a very, very quick search for this. And so when you type something into Google, you'll get a long list of websites up. And for the top 20, on average, they had about 22% of AI content on the site. So that was content that was written by AI. So any website that you go to, basically what it's saying is that 22% of it is written by AI on average. Now, if you come to the ASR website, I can assure you that none of it is written by AI because I've written a lot of it and somebody else wrote it before me. So, you know, it's very changeable from different sites. Some will be using AI a lot and some will be using it hardly at all. However, it's estimated that 57% of new content being published online may be AI. That's quite a startling figure. And this is only going to grow. And it's very difficult to know because there are no reliable ways at the moment of knowing, I can tell that a lot of things are AI because I do a lot of work with words and I read a lot of things. So I usually know and I go, oh, that doesn't sound quite right. But there's no reliable way that you can find out for sure that something's written by AI. Is it a problem? It depends your way of thinking about it. So much of the stuff that's being written by AI is what I call lift music. It's page filler. It's nothing. It's candy floss. It looks pretty. It's just that it's a blog. It's like those recipes. I don't know if you've ever searched for a recipe and you just want a recipe for a cake, and you get like a screed of stuff about lemons. Oh, lemons are yellow fruit that grow here and they're very nice and they've got lots of important oils in them. That's the kind of stuff that's being written by AI, and it's pointless. It's just, as I say, it's page filler. It's lift music, and it can be used very usefully for sort of standard letters. I've been using like spell checker and things like that on Word for a long time, so I shouldn't knock it. And there are ways that AI can help with grammar and things like that if you're not sure about it. I think for a lot of general stuff, it can be useful. For specialized things, if you're trying to talk to people very specifically about one subject, I still think that it's better coming from a person.
Jenny, can I just take 4 minutes?
Yes. I'm running out of time a little bit, but I think I'm coming to the end anyway, so it's good. So should you be using AI? It's entirely up to you. It's whether you think there's no right or wrong about this situation. You'll get an option to use it for things like social media, for websites. If you want to give it a go, then you can do. But if you want personality and high quality content, then I still think it needs to come from a person. So, some thoughts to end with. Communication, it's hard. Like if it was easy, everyone could do it, and you'd see much better content out there. I'm hoping that some of the things that I've taught you today are maybe going to be useful, but the biggest thing to do is to try it. Try things out, monitor how it works. If it doesn't work, then try something different. Key things, words are important. Whether they're written by AI, whether they're written by a person, words are really important because they're still how we learn things as human beings. They're still how we find out about stuff. Pictures are really important. They can really help to lift things and to bring people into things and to tell a story. But it is the words that are the crucial thing, I always think. Just give it a go. Try things. Don't worry about stuff. Find a friend to run things by. Get a book. Lots of good books out there. Go online, look at guidance. Don't be scared. And then just finishing with this, what I think is a lovely quote from Douglas Adams. The fact is, I don't know where my ideas come from, and nor does any writer. The only real answer is to drink way too much coffee and buy yourself a desk that doesn't collapse when you beat your head against it. So I think thank you very much to Douglas Adams.
Jenny, thank you very much for that. And I think you finished very aptly there. For anyone that has tried to write any communications, then it is extremely complex and difficult at times, and you do bang your head once or twice. I'm just going to upload the presentation again because it's.
Oh, sorry, that was probably me.
No, what are you? Jenny, thank you very much for that. That was really informative and lots of food for thought there, actually. What we will do is we'll download this presentation as a PDF and send it to everybody so they'll have copies of your presentation as an aid memoir when they go to write their next piece of communication that's going out to wherever the source is. We've got a comment here from Jack Burrell, who said, we just had an event, but my attempts in reaching 3 newspapers failed completely. Wish I'd heard Jenny a few months ago. That's lovely feedback. Jack, well, now you know what to do. And I'm going to, when I send that PDF to you, I'll also send you Jenny's contacts. So if you need to pick her brains further, then she'll be able to support you further there. Okay.
I should say it's not foolproof. I can't guarantee that you'll get a journalist interested, but hopefully.
Disclaimers in already, great. Love it. Okay, thank you, Jenny. Over to Jen. Jen, do you want to take control of the screen?
Yeah. I was waiting on seeing the thing. Right, okay, that's me on now. Okay.
Perfect, everybody. Thank you, Jen.
Okay. Afternoon, everyone. Just to introduce myself, so Jen Pittendrich, and I do communications and also administration for CWA. So nice to be here and to see folk face to face. Right. Oh, here's my title slide. So I just thought, first of all, I would tell you a bit how I came to end up working at CWA, and it's relevant because of communication aspects. So I worked for a number of years in the NHS as a dietitian, and latterly it was more about service development rather than patient contact. So I did a lot of things like writing patient leaflets, developing programs for patients, training programs, established a website, all that kind of thing. So communication was a big part of that. And as Jenny was speaking about plain English, one of the courses I did along my way was a plain English course, which I loved. It was just great because it just clarified things for me in the sense of just using, few words, keeping it as straightforward as possible for people. The other training that I did, and I'll touch on it a bit later probably, was health literacy. So that was why it's relevant to this is it's just kind of remembering that the written word isn't everybody's cup of tea, and it's important to have things visual and explained simply so that your audience, which I'm guessing is pretty wide, that you are appealing to as many people as possible. So anyway, after working in the NHS, I went off looking for a new adventure, something different, had no clear idea. And I ended up working in the voluntary sector, it was just what appealed to me. I kind of was at that stage of, I'll just go with my gut feeling. Started volunteering with a group, a local sort of organisation, and it was all about growing fruit and vegetables and getting community involved and all that kind of thing. Great, loved it, and I was doing communications for them. So website, again, it's very similar to the NHS, just a completely different topic. So doing training programmes, leaflets, social media, all that kind of thing. As a result of that, got a short-term post with Aberdeen University, kind of similar thing, developing a bit of a training website, training programme. Then got a post working with a short-term post with Long COVID Scotland, who are a charity, similar-ish type thing. So anyway, my point is communication was important in all these posts, hugely important. And it's this thing that I really enjoy, and it kind of made me realise actually what I need to look for is a job in communications. And lo and behold, in my voluntary sector Facebook feed, this advert popped up, or this post popped up. And I will come back to this, but this is what it looked like. Didn't really say very much. I didn't think it was particularly eye-catching, and yet it did catch my eye. And it caught my eye on a couple of occasions, and I checked it out a number of times, checking out the job description and things. So I will come back to that. But that was my first sight, really catching sight of CWA. And I had never heard of them, and I'd never heard of community woodlands. But I love woodlands and I love being out in them. So there you go. That was my route to CWA. And just to finish that story. So Sharon and I, that was 2 posts. Sharon got 1 post and I got the other post. And we've now been in post for 16 months. So we're a very happy crew, aren't we, Sharon?
Oh, dream team.
So just to quickly tell you a bit about the session outline. Oh, and just to say, so this is my first time using PowerPoint for a while, and I was saying to Sharon earlier just how much change there's been in PowerPoint in the last 3 years, and much more that you can do with it. So the photograph is from PowerPoint. And so I'm just going to give you a quick overview about the communications that I'm involved in, first of all, sort of on a day-to-day basis. And then I'm going to speak to you more about the visual aspects of communication, because I'm a very visual person, and a lot of my job is about pulling stuff together, hopefully in a visually appealing way. So I'll speak about presentation of your communications, a bit about speaking about group logos, which is maybe a bit off at the side there, but I still think it's important. Speak to you about chunking, website and social media. And hopefully, I won't be repeating what Jenny said, it's more complementing what Jenny said, hopefully. So communications that I'm involved in really on a day-to-day basis. The website, I'm on it practically every day, uploading something, changing something, suddenly notice something is misspelt, so you're back on doing it. So that's, I spend time doing that. Social media, we post probably weekly, not necessarily everything is coming from us, but it's sharing posts of other interesting posts that people might be interested in, or that we think our members would be interested in. Monthly bulletin comes around amazingly quickly. It's amazing how a month goes by. I get one bulletin out and then I think I can take a breath and then it's time to get the next bulletin together. So that's an ongoing kind of thing. You're collecting information all the time. Newsletters are quarterly, so sort of seasonal newsletters we do, and again it's amazing how quickly that comes around. And then we also do information notes, which are speaking for members and for other people to access about information about different aspects of Community Woodlands. In terms of aims, I always kind of keep it in the back of my mind that, what we're doing is sharing and promoting useful information and events. And one of my things is I'm always looking to drive traffic to the website. So rather than it just being, say, a post on social media that people might like or whatever, what I'm wanting is that people will actually click on it and go back to the website and then get the information. One of the things that sticks in my mind, I started doing a social, can't remember, it was a course anyway, and it was all about using the websites and social media to promote your stuff. But one of the things that sticks in my mind is that likes on social media are very good, but they're more for your ego rather than anything. What you're wanting is people to click on it and actually go through to your information. So, and with everything that we do, we're really looking to promote CWA and our members and Community Woodlands. So on to the 5 aspects of communication that I want to speak about. And really, I'm not saying that it's in no particular order, apart from the fact that I think I've kind of put it into what I hope is a logical order. And it's based on my experience having been with CWA and my previous experience with my other jobs. And it's just kind of things for you to think about and hopefully benefit from if you follow up on any of it. Really just looking to be helpful. So first of all, presentation. As I say, I'm very visual, and I think how you present your information as much as that, and sorry, I should say, I'm assuming that you've all got your stuffs written, it's in line with what Jenny said, so I'm not going into that aspect of it. But it's about, presenting it so that it's appealing to people, that they want to read it and go further. And when I started my voluntary post, I was kind of keen to find some kind of graphics package that we could use, that we would be able to make attractive looking posts rather than sort of scrappy looking things. Just because I think if it's more appealing, eye-catching, more chance that people are going to read your stuff. So discovered this fantastic tool called Canva. I don't know, it's because we're not doing this face-to-face as such. I don't know if any of you are already using Canva. If you're not, I would suggest that you go out and have a look at it. So it's got a huge range of applications, so you can use it for your social media posts, for logos, leaflets, newsletters. You can even make wee videos out of it. You can do presentations and also website work, so it's very flexible. The great thing is as well is that it's free for non-profit organisations. And so when I found out about it, I was very excited, but then I saw I think it works out around about £100 a year if you don't, if you aren't a non-profit organisation. But I was quite excited to see that they did do a free version, and it's not just a very low-end free version. You're getting the full pro version, so it's superb. And all I really had to do was it was a voluntary organisation which had a constitution, and I just had to send the constitution off to them and show them the website and such like, and then great, we got Canva. So I was delighted to start CWA and find out that they'd already used Canva, so it wasn't too much of a move to get it installed back again. So that's the web address if anybody's interested in finding out more about Canva. The reason I'm touching on it first is I use Canva for practically everything I do, so I find it hugely useful. Right, so yeah, intuitive to use. So I just thought I'll give you a quick look at what you can do with it. So this is just showing you kind of the left-hand side of a screen. So you've got a range of options there. See if I move my cursor, can you see it? Moving, yeah, right. Okay, so you've got a range of options down here. So your design, you could go to that and it'll tell you, it will, say what you're wanting to do. So you can select whether you wanted to do an Instagram post or a brochure or a poster or make a film or whatever. So for the basis of this wee example, I thought I'll just do an Instagram post because I quite like square posts. So I selected Instagram, and then what you get here is templates. So if you use the bar to scroll down, there's a huge range of different templates, and you can click on one that takes your eye, click on it, and it will bring it up. So this was one I thought, well, this would be okay for a woodland. So I clicked on that, and then once you start to click on different elements of the design, and you can change it. So this leaf you could change to be in a tree, you can change this green, you could knock off this block of colour here, you can change the font, you can change the colour of the font, you can make it bigger or smaller. It's hugely flexible, and as I say, it's very intuitive to use. This is your kind of working toolbar up here. You can do different effects with the font if you want. So that gives you a bit of a look at that. So what I did with this one really quite quickly and quite easily is to change it to, this is my fictitious Glenfeshie wood, and just to a post volunteers needed. And that was done literally in about 5-10 minutes. So huge use, Canva, and easy to use. Oh, sorry, I should have said as well, if you've got any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put into the chat or whatever as we go along. Don't feel you have to wait till the end. I'm happy to answer questions as we go along. So the second thing that I would say is, if you don't have a group logo, I think that you should think about it. So I almost think that it's a bit of a shortcut to any communications that you do, whether you're putting out a poster, a newsletter, social media posts. It's a very quick way of flagging up who it's from and doing it in a kind of an eye-catching way. So if you've got quite a distinctive logo, then people will instantly recognise you know, who the post or whatever is from. It's good to have your logo in different shapes and sizes, so that, for example, this is obviously a rectangular one, but we've got it in a long version. You know, it's quite good to have it in a square version or a round version, because different things like, you know, for example, I can think Instagram looks for a round version of logos rather than square ones. So I quite often see square logos in a round hole, you know the saying, and it's not great. So if you're getting a logo done, look at it to be in different shapes and sizes. Also think about having transparent versions, because that's quite good to be able to do a wee sort of natty insert into some things. It works out quite well sometimes. And it should be said that Canva, you can actually, so I could take this, I could chop off the community woodlands part, and then I could actually use their background remover to make this. So it's all doable. And so along with your logo, with the content of your communications, the style that you have, you know, whether you're being chatty or formal or using sort of local dialect or references or whatever, the look of your communications all builds up to your group identity. So you start to build up your sort of recognition with your audience, which I think has got to be a good thing. This, I've just taken a sort of a section from our members page, and I think it's pretty typical. So out of these 12 logos that I've lifted, 3 of them don't have a group logo as far as I know. So that corresponds with what I quickly calculated. About a quarter of or a fifth of our group don't have logos. So just kind of, I'd encourage them to get a logo. Logos can say so much or so little, and I'm using this one as an example. You can tell from this logo, well, I think you can tell, it's quite organized. It's, you know, there's a bit of backing behind this. They've got a lot of messages in here. When I went through to their website, you know, they've got a bit about their coastal habitat, a bit about their mountains, their woodland, their housing. And then this turns out, I thought it was the moon or the sun, but it's not, it's a head. So it's about people, and then environmental work. So within this wee logo, there's a lot being said. And then by contrast, I really like this one, which is a dead simple one from Milton Community Woodlands. I'm presuming they maybe had a kids competition, or maybe one of the volunteers or whatever. But and I think this has been done using Canva. So they've just scanned the drawing in and then made a very personal logo, which I think is a great idea, and it makes it very distinctive that it's Milton. And then this is my fictitious wood. I just kind of quickly threw together the logo just to show you what you can do. And so you can achieve that kind of round logo very, very quickly, or square or rectangular. That's the other great thing about Canva, is you could work on that square version in Instagram, and then you can get it to convert it into a different shape. It'll transfer everything over. All you've got to do is then click and drag the font or the shapes or whatever to make it visually how you want it to look. Chunking. So when I put this in, I got the PowerPoint to select a photograph as part of their design option, and they showed a lion. So I thought that wasn't quite appropriate. Presumably speaking that lions eat chunks. So I changed that to more of a, I don't know, wooden puzzle type thing. So what am I saying about chunking? Well, chunking is from my health literacy training in NHS Tetris. That's it. Thanks, Jenny. So from sort of my NHS days, and very much it was along the lines of, so although, you know, plain English is speaking about breaking it down in the plain English training that I did spoke about breaking things down into paragraphs and using bullet points and such like. Chunking was just kind of, for me, it took it more into the sort of the visual thing. So the point that you could, and again, you can do this in Canva, that you can use colour, blocks of colour to help lead a reader through your communication. So it's kind of adding to that plain English basics. I also like to try and make things skimmable, and Jenny spoke about this. So, you know, with the use of headings and keeping in mind that people are always looking to read things as quickly, as easy as possible, between the use of headings, colours, bullet points, you can make things quite quick and simple for people to read. And I always look to use photographs to help break down written stuff, along with, you know, a logical sort of sequence and flow. So just to give you a look at what I've been doing since I came into post. So one of the things that we were looking at was the information notes. And this is, so it's all exactly as you would expect. It's got headings, it's broken down into paragraphs, bullet points and all that kind of thing. But the beauty of Canva is you can bring it alive a bit by, with the layout, adding in colours and photographs. And Canva's got a whole load of stock photographs that you can access, a massive range of photographs, which aren't always appropriate. And I do think that there really is a place for your own photographs to make things look a bit more personal. But for the information notes, because we're speaking about hard information, I think that the stock photos are quite useful there. And then for our quarterly newsletter, again, that was kind of the format of it previously. And then with Canva, you can start to make it more sort of, well, hopefully visually appealing. I do get feedback that it's visually appealing. I'm not just saying that. And I tend to use, so say within the newsletter, so I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with newsletters, but I tend to say for this article here, it was on the rainforest project that we're working with Jenny and the Alliance on. So I used kind of these kind of colours for that article, which was 3 pages long. And then the next article, I used quite different colours. So it's, again, for me, it's about giving people visual clues that, oh, okay, that's that article dealt with, and we're moving on to a different article. Monthly bulletin is slightly different because I don't use Canva for that, or at least not directly. So initially when I started, it was MailChimp that we were using. And MailChimp, you can send up to 500 subscribers for free. Once you get over 500 subscribers, it starts to cost. So at that point, we moved over to MailerLite. But it's a very, very similar layout. And this is what it looks like. So I always think of the bulletin as being in a very linear kind of presentation. And I do still use Canva because I actually insert graphics and such like that I've made on Canva. I just upload them as photographs to insert into the bulletin. And I try and make it as skimmable as possible. So I always think of the bulletin as being short and punchy. I'm just kind of putting in snippets that people can skim down if they're interested. They've got the orange button mostly that they can hit on and find out more information. But I'm really just putting in a sentence at the top to either whet their appetites or for them to quickly see if they're interested in reading further or not. On to website. So you've got all your communications. And as I say, with social media, I'm hoping to get people engaged to come through to the website. So since I've started, I've kind of, again, it's that whole visual thing. I don't have photographs of what the website looked like before, but I've done a fair amount of work on it. And again, it's just to make it easier to navigate and a bit more visual. So kind of refined the headlines, as it were, along the top. And then on each page, I've tried to make it as visual as possible. And these visuals here correspond with what goes on to social media. So it kind of saves time as well. And if you pull through the same pictures, like for example, this session that we're doing today, that was what went onto social media. It's the same visual that's on the website so that people can quickly find it when they come through to this page. And then once you click on that, it takes you to the more information. So as much as possible, I am trying to keep it visual for folk. This is what our members page looks like. And again, on Canva, I made up these wee icons just to take the bulk of the information off a page so that it's not overwhelming for people when they go onto the page. Because I just find, you know, some pages I go onto, I just think I can't even be bothered starting there. But if it's broken down in visual and buttons, I like it. And also, when I was in the NHS, what I was told by the guys in Edinburgh was that if people have to scroll down a web page, they don't bother doing it. So just, you're really looking to just fill the screen, as it were. So I kind of keep that in mind. I think the difficulty with the website for me is I have to remember it appears in different formats. So I do it on this bigger screen in front of me to my right, but then you have to go and look at it on a smaller screen. Then you have to look at it on your phone and look at it on your, you know, your tablet to see all the different versions, because sometimes I look and I think, oh, it's not showing up nicely at all. So I then have to rethink things. So that can be a bit pesky and time consuming, but I think I've got into a formula now. What if you don't have a website? Well, at the conference, speaking to Annegach Woods, I thought, great, they currently, Annegach Woods Trust don't have a website at the moment. And what they use is Linktree, which is something that we use. And it's Linktree is free, and it's a place that you can go on and add important links. And then all you've got to do is give people your Linktree address, and they can go on and access these links. So our one is fairly short, because I revised it because I was doing this presentation and it was looking a bit long. So I've taken it back to just very basic things to take people onto the website. But Annegach Woods, whilst they're waiting on their website being developed, have got a huge long Linktree. But I think it's a great use of Linktree if you don't have a website. And you know, you can go and you click on the link to their newsletter, and it takes you through to their MailChimp place, or they've got some forums in their Office 365 forums. They link you through to other people's websites, but the point is they've got an information hub that you can refer your audience to for more information. Social media. Again, all I'm doing is speaking to you about the presentation of it more than anything. Facebook, we've got Facebook, Instagram and X. And Sharon and I have spoken about this before, and we would say that for our audience, Facebook is by far the place where we get our most uptake and most traffic, and we're kind of aware of that. Instagram is growing, and I would say that X is a bit of a different audience, but it's not so much our community woodlands. So this is our next event that's coming up, which is about the iNaturalist app. So generally speaking, what I do is in Canva, I'll knock up an image, and on the basis of thinking people might not even bother to read the bit that goes with the post, I'm trying to get the information into the image so that people pick it up quite quickly. And I will always put the link in that takes folk back to the website in the events page. For this one, I thought it probably needed a bit more explanation within the social media post, which is why I've put in more information there. But quite often, I will just put in a one-liner and the link back to the website. But what I do like about Facebook is that if you do a wee sequence of 4 images, of the square images, it shows up as a winner. So you can actually get more information over in quite small chunks to people, and hopefully they pick up a bit more of what you're speaking about. Instagram, slightly different. So I will use the same images. I will more or less use the same spiel for each of the platforms. But Instagram, you're only getting 1 picture at a time. So although there was 2 pictures for this post that showed up for Facebook as a 2, for Instagram, you're only getting 1 showing, and there's the arrow there that you would click on to take you on to the next image. So I just kind of bear it in mind, thinking not everybody will click on, so it's trying to think, you know, what's going to get the most bang for your buck. Twitter, slightly different, so it is showing the 2 images, but you're very curtailed in terms of your word count on Twitter. So I've always got to pare back even, you know, a very short sentence or paragraph, so that it fits in with the Twitter format. And Twitter will cut your link if there's too much in it, but the link still works. So that's really all I've got to say about social media. So yes, a full circle and final thought. So I'm going to take you back to this Facebook post which caught my eye, and the reason I'm bringing you back to that is, so as I say, Sharon and I have been in post for 16 months now. I've done a lot of work, started using Canva. You know, it's great when I go onto the website and I can look at the analytics and see how many people have come on to the pages. So you begin to get an idea of how well your social media posts are working by how many people are looking at your at the pages on the website. And I can see that, you know, our visitors to the website is hugely increased. There's much more visitors to a wider range of pages. But what made me smile is that this post that Andy did in haste, so Andy's our director, was very pressured at the time he was doing this. He did this post very quickly with minimal, in fact, I don't even know what he used to do the image, but it did make me smile that on the website in the last couple of years, this is the page that got the most hits. So even with all my stuff, you know, the Canva stuff, and we're doing more social media and such, like, this one has outperformed, maybe not by a huge amount. We're speaking about by about 20 page views, and just to say, probably about 30 of these page views were mine, because I kept on going back and forth to have a look at the advert. But just to say that if anybody sat there thinking, well, this is all very well, but I just don't have the time to do it, all is not lost. You know, if you've got a good message that people are interested in, you don't have to do, you know, a huge amount of work. People will pick up on it. And that is me, the end. Thank you for listening.
Jen, thank you very much for that. And as somebody who does other work that requires communication using all the social media, I've learned a thing or two, so thank you so much. And can I just say, I was probably the person that did the other 20 hits on that. So, folks, we're slightly over time, so any questions, please do either send them to me, and I will pass on to both Jen and Jenny, or please contact them directly yourself once I send the PDF over to you. If I could ask for some feedback from you as participants of this event, we are required to give feedback to our funders, and we take that feedback obviously from those participants at our events. So it would be great if you could spend a couple of minutes, it's not too lengthy. That just remains for me to just say thank you very much to both our speakers. To Jenny, thank you so much for a really informative session. And to Jen, both of you have been fantastic. And thank you all very much yourselves, our attendees, for turning up and sticking with us with this session. I hope that you have found it extremely useful. And please do check our website and our social medias for any future events. It'd be lovely to have you there. Take care, everybody.